Alright, well, you'll have to bear with me, as this is the first time. This is basically a pilot for a video idea called Dirty Laundry, where as I fold my laundry, talk about drama going on in, I guess, the video game industry, you can call it. I hope you get that nice cloth effect of whatever. I don't know if there's a specific word for that besides cloth effect. But yeah, so recently in the video game world, there were reports of a potential strike by video game voice actors. This kind of appeared, it apparently happened before in 2005, according to an article I was reading in Kotaku. I believe it was either Kotaku or Forbes. Those are the two sites that I referenced and looked at for basically source material on what's going on really, because I remember I saw a hashtag called Performance Matters. Some people were retweeting it, basically talking about, I guess, the way that video game voice actors are paid, how they aren't paid well, according to some of them, and they just want to get paid more. They want to get paid based on the sales of the video game that they worked on. So for things such as, Grand Theft Auto, which go on to sell millions and millions of copies, maybe the voice actor wasn't expecting it to sell that much, or their original contract wasn't tuned into the way that how much money it would make, I guess, so they want to share in that profit because they were partly responsible for that video game. So that's kind of one of the points that's contested right now is how much responsibility are those sales coming from the voice actors, or are the sales coming from the game as a full product, and what percentage or what ratio of that game is contributed to solely the performers vocally and sometimes motion capture as well, because people like Naughty Dog made this famous with Uncharted, where they had Nolan North doing both the voice acting itself as well as the motion capture in the studio, where they would have the ping pong balls on their faces, they called it, and be running around and doing stuff like that. He recently did a video game interview with Eurogamer, where he talked about how sometimes they would do runs and they would have to be running back and forth to a certain time to do certain scenes in Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception. So it's all very interesting. They also want to get paid for vocal stress, because sometimes the roles have them yelling all the time. That's a lot of games, like imagine God of War, basically. Then you also get motion capture bonuses for, doing, like I said, with the Uncharted games, where you do both the voice work and the motion capture work for the studio. That way they get a 2-in-1 deal, instead of bringing on two different people to do it. And then they also want transparency with how much they'll be doing, like how often they'll be called into the studio, how long the hours they'll be working are, on stuff like that. That one I actually like, that one I totally am on board with. It's the other parts that, I don't know, I'm kind of conflicted on, just because of the way that developers themselves are treated as far as pay and work hours and work stress. It's been very well documented that video game developers have very crappy pay and aren't exactly treated that well. A majority of the studios, at least, it's pretty much you have a set period of time to work, and then you actually end up working a lot more than you originally thought or originally planned. And it's kind of become an expected thing, and it's basically become known as a crunch time, where video game crunch during the last few weeks, maybe even the last few months of development, these people who have already dedicated so much of their life to this product all of a sudden have to basically, in some extreme cases, live at the studio and be working day in and day out at the studio, working on this game to make sure it hits a certain date. And, the compensation for that isn't exactly that great. This is my Plumtree shirt. And so, there's a problem there that is kind of its own separate issue, but it is kind of ticked off some developers on how voice actors feel entitled to sharing the profits of the products, when the developers themselves sometimes get cut out of the profit of the product, depending on how depending on how well it's performed. There's been a lot of reports about how people get cut out because of the Metacritic average, where if they were 1 point higher and hit the 85 on Metacritic, they would have gotten $1 million bonus to split between the team members. And so voice actors coming in and saying, hey, we want a cut of that profit as well, is it's not directly disrespectful to the people who they do dedicate more time because a lot of the time, I mean, voice actors are pretty much contracted into it, so they're not employees of whoever it is that's working on it. They're not an employee of Naughty Dog. They're kind of just brought in to do the work, and then once their work is done, they leave, and the team stays, and they're still working on it. And they were even working on it before that person came in to do the voice acting. And I mean, that's not to say that voice acting is an easy job or it's something that anybody can do. And I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why the voice actors are, thinking of doing a strike, is because they know that their job isn't something that you can just bring in anyone to do. You can't just bring in somebody to be like, oh, okay, we want you to do Nathan Drake, because Nolan North, who actually hasn't appeared on any lists as far as promoting this strike potentiality. You can't just get anybody in to go like, oh, just do the Nolan North and do Nathan Drake for Uncharted 4, because Nolan North is out. Or come in and have him replace Troy Baker and be like, all right, we need you to do the Joel voice for The Last of Us 2 or something. You can't just simply replace Troy Baker. And so because, these voice actors know that, they are very talented and that they do have a certain weight, they believe that they can use that weight to get better benefits, which, I mean, in the long run isn't a terrible thing, but it's just because it's relative to just the overall crappiness of game developers kind of getting the short end of the stick when it comes to the way payments are doled out in the video game industry. And one of the specific examples given in the article that I was reading was the voice actor for Nico Bellic got about $100,000 for about 15 months of work. And so when you do the math on that, that's $27 per hour, and that's only if those 15 months basically have no days off. So that's if he was working 8-hour days every single day for 15 months straight. It was $27 per hour. And of course, it's probably not how it was. He was probably working weekdays, at the most 8 hours a day, which, you get weekends off, which is good, and that means you get paid even more for the time that you're spending on it. And I mean, hey, I wouldn't mind $100,000 over 15 months. That's good money. So it's kind of funny when, you get a stat like that, and he's saying how he felt like, he was cheated because, well, maybe that weren't his exact words, but the sentiment was he felt like he was cheated out of money because Grand Theft Auto 4, of course, went on to sell like hundreds of millions and make millions of dollars for Rockstar, and he, only got the $100,000 cut. And he, I guess, if these terms were accepted, the ones that they're putting forth now, things like that would happen, and he would end up getting more on the back end, post-release after the work is done, and the game goes on, and it's released finally and sold and stuff. They would get some money from the back end for that, kind of like royalties almost. So, it's very interesting. It's, it's very nuanced. There's not a clear-cut answer on if it's wrong or if it's right, or even if there is a right or wrong answer to it. It's kind of like an interesting thing where I am very interested to see if they do a strike, what will become of it. Will it end up being to where there'll be a certain amount of time where the recognized voices that we've always had, like in our video games, like Steve Blum or the dude who, not David Ballard, he's a multiplayer guy at Naughty Dog, Troy Baker, Nolan North, Jennifer Hale, Steve Blum, I'm forgetting some of the other ones, David Hayter, who did Solid Snake, these recognizable voices, and some of them maybe you don't know the names of, like I don't know the names of a lot of them, but I would recognize their voice. All of a sudden they're just gone, for like a year. You don't have, there's like just a brand new voice cast brought in for all these games, and you can notice the quality dip as well. And it kind of would be reminiscent, not entirely, but somewhat of the writer strike that happened in Hollywood, where writers were getting together because they felt like they weren't being appreciated enough, which they weren't. And, they were able to leverage their talent, because not anybody can just go in and write a comedy or a sitcom or something. They were able to leverage that to get better recognition. And so that would be very interesting to see if the voice actors do this in the video game industry. And also it would be interesting if developers themselves would finally unionize. And I know it's not like a simple thing, like you can't just turn a switch and unionize and have better benefits and stuff for developers, but it does seem like it's something that they should be working for, because, I mean, compared to the quality of work right now when you're a developer, it does not seem like I mean, it basically seems like there's nowhere to go but up as far as if you were to unionize and everything like that. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what goes on. So that was the pilot episode for Dirty Laundry. Got some laundry done, not exactly a lot of it. So yeah, so if you like this, you can like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, you know, all that dumb YouTube crap that everyone says at the end of the video. Most important one though is follow me on Twitter at number8axel. Hey. But yeah, thanks for watching. Actually, I very appreciate it. Even if this even goes up, which it's probably not. It's probably just gonna be a pilot. Maybe I'll keep it on the YouTube link as like a private, and one day, in like a year from now, I'll just make it public and it'll just show up, and the 5 people who follow me will be like, "Oh man, what's this? This is like an old video. What?" But yeah, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, seriously, thank you for watching, and hope you have a great day.